Singaporeans who want to take part in clinical trials can now better find out how to do so through a new portal. They can also identify which ones are best suited for them. The portal was launched by the Singapore Clinical Research Institute amid the growing need for new and innovative healthcare studies. Patients can find out what trials they want to take part in based on their interests or clinical needs. They can discuss with the healthcare providers whether it's safe for them to take part in the trial. This could help alleviate common concerns and potentially boost participation in such studies. Speaking at the launch, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat says clinical trials could potentially lower treatment costs and improve the long-term sustainability of healthcare. He adds that they can drive innovation in healthcare and provide a rigorous framework to test new products and solutions.
Our experience with the COVID-19 pandemic taught us how healthcare systems must respond to sudden and disruptive shocks in a globalized, hyper-connected world. To save precious life and preserve public trust, our healthcare system must innovate with speed and scale and make these innovations widely available.
And we have our guests in the studio to take us through what this portal means for you and me. Associate Professor Danny Soon is CEO of the Consortium for Clinical Research and Innovation Singapore and also Executive Director at the Singapore Clinical Research Institute. And joining him is Ms Nidhi Swarup, patient advocate who supports clinical trials. Welcome to the studio. Professor Soon, perhaps we can start with you. You know, the new portal is set to be a welcome boost to the nation's clinical research ecosystem. What does this portal offer that the previous process of signing up for a trial or finding a participant didn't?
Thank you for having us. So the Clinical Trials SG, Clinical Trials Portal, is a portal set up by the Singapore Clinical Research Institute, or SCRI. And it basically aims to serve three different communities. Patients who are looking to participate in trials. It's also looking to service researchers or clinicians who are trying to learn how to run clinical trials. And also clinical trial sponsors, companies who maybe are looking for principal investigators to partner with in order to put their clinical trials in Singapore. So this Clinical Trials Portal actually has a few features. One is a very comprehensive database of clinical trials that are currently recruiting. So this is a searchable database which you can go in and actually find certain types of diseases that you may be interested in terms of trials that are running. It also provides information to patients in terms of what the clinical trial process is like, what are the protections of their rights, and then what are the roles and responsibilities for, say, the regulators and ethical review boards.
I imagine that it is a highly regulated process, but how does SCRI facilitate it with and together with your other various stakeholders?
So clinical trials is indeed a highly regulated process worldwide, right? So typically, before a trial can start, you need to gain approvals from several parties. First of all, the institute that is running the trial must be comfortable. The investigators must be qualified in order to be investigator on the trial. And then the regulators, if for trials with investigational products, meaning that drugs that are being given to patients in trials, the regulators actually have to look at the trial protocol to be assured that this trial is being conducted in a safe fashion for the patients. And last but not least, an ethical review board typically also has to review the trials to make sure the rights of the patients are protected. And all these checkpoints have to be cleared before the trial can proceed to enroll patients.
Okay. Nidhi, you know, you are a patient advocate for clinical trials. Share with us what spurred you into doing this and what type of clinical trials have you participated in?
Thanks for the question and thanks for having me here. I talk about Crohn's disease as well as fibromyalgia because I was diagnosed with these conditions way back more than 10 years ago, actually. So what happened in 2014 was I was under the care of a rheumatologist. And what happens in fibromyalgia is the whole body hurts. There's a lot of pain in the muscles. So the painkillers that are prescribed can sometimes be so strong that I actually started feeling like a zombie. Okay. I found it very difficult to be able to focus, to think clearly. So I was negotiating with the doctor that I'm willing to live with certain level of pain, but I want to be able to think properly. So it was pretty challenging for a couple of years trying to tweak my medication.
Sure.
And that's when my rheumatologist suggested it might be good for you to try this one clinical trial. And my immediate thought was, of course, I can benefit from the trial, but by me participating, hopefully many more patients will also benefit. So that was the thing.
It must have been quite a journey for you, right? And trials are only as good as the participants that come forward. So typically, what sort of obstacles or concerns the patients tell you about before they come forward to partake in these clinical trials? And do you think that this portal will help to clear those doubts?
Absolutely. Clinicaltrials.sg. Firstly, is such an easy name to remember, okay? And then once we get onto the website, there's so much information that anyone has any doubt to clarify, to understand what are clinical trials, what are our rights, what we should know about, what is informed consent. All these pieces of information are easily available. Moreover, let's say I pick one disease, which is Crohn's disease. So I can type it in, and it shows the entire list of clinical trials in Singapore for that specific illness.
Okay.
It can't get easier than that.
Okay. Professor Soon, there are people, as we were saying just now, that there are people who may have questions about the potential risks of clinical trials. How is the safety of participants protected? And can they find information such as this on the portal as well?
Yes, so the portal actually has a lot of information about the trial process and the phases of drug development, if you're talking about trials in that context. So, it tells you about the different phases of the clinical trials. It tells you about what goes on before a medication enters into clinical testing in patients. For instance, in the preclinical phases, where there's laboratory testing, there's toxicology testing that occurs in animals. And all of these things are done before a new medication is taken into human testing. And even in human testing, it occurs in phases. It goes from a small trial, a phase 1 trial, to a phase 2 to a phase 3, and that progresses through at each stage looking at the safety and efficacy of the trial of the drug at each stage, and that establishes the safety profile of the drug.
So
and yes,
the portal in some ways gives the patient more autonomy and control in the process. Will a patient's family know when a new drug or process can be used to improve treatment and sign them up for it?
So at this point, we are still developing some features of this portal. You can sign up to receive notifications of new trials. And going forwards, we'll be looking to customize it a little bit better so that you can specify the types of trials you want to be informed about. At this point, that is still under development.
Okay. Nidhi, do you think that this portal is able to convince more people to come forward to take part in clinical trials?
Yes, of course. Because currently, if I can say until today, the process was we wait for a clinician to tell us about any clinical trial in Singapore. And with this portal being available, people can actually log in to see if there are other trials. And using that information, they can have a discussion with a clinician, their attending physician, and say that they might be interested. But of course, there are inclusion and exclusion criteria. So depending on that, the discussion can go forward and the patient might be able to participate. So it gives a lot of freedom and options. That is what patients are looking for.
That's really good to know. Nidhi, Professor Soon, thank you very much for coming in to speak with us. That was Associate Professor Danny Soon, Executive Director from SCRI, and a supporter of clinical trials, Ms Nidhi Swarup.